In this video, we're going to tie Beck's Sili legs bonefish fly. First thing we're going to do is just start off with some chartreuse thread. We're going to take about a hook eye lengths of thread wraps down the shank. Then we're going to tie in a pair of lead dumbbell eyes. And I'm tying on a size 6 Tiemco saltwater 811S hook, and I'm using medium lead eyes. You can also use small. You can also use bead chain if you want it to be a little bit lighter. But this is a pretty good all-purpose size and weight for bonefish. Once I get those tied in, we're going to tie in our body material. That's just going to be some pearl flat braid. We're just going to tie this in right on top of the shank of the hook. With this fly, I go just a little bit of a ways down the bend of the hook. Then I'm going to take my thread to the front of the hook, right up by the eye. All we're going to do is just build up a little tapered body with this flat braid. And we can capture the material right up by the eye here. And what I like to do for this next step is I actually invert the hook, and we're ready to tie in the underwing, which is going to be about 5 or 6 strands of pearl crystal flash. I'm going to tie this in on one side of the shank of the hook, right kind of in the middle of the clump. Then I'll just pull the other half of the clump to the other side. Now what we're going to do is tie in the overwing. For that, I'm just going to use some calf tail hair. I'm actually going to put it in a stacker and stack it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just like to get the tips kind of roughly evened up. Calf tail can be extremely difficult to stack, just because it's so coarse. I'm going to take the calf tail out of the stacker. You can see here I haven't used much. This fly is actually tied fairly sparse. Got to be careful not to overdo it with this fly. We're going to tie in some calf tail that just reaches past the bend of the hook. I'm just going to put down a few wraps. Then I got to trim very close to the eye of the hook. This calf tail is very bulky, so you have to get in there with a nice fine tip scissor. You'll want to make sure that you really crank down pretty hard on these wraps. This calf tail can be kind of difficult to work with. Pull out any of the loose fibers. And we're going to take our crystal flash here, our underwing, and we're going to trim it so it's just longer than our overwing, or calf tail. Then the last material is some crazy legs, also known as Sili legs. We're using the pearl with the fluorescent orange tips. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie in these legs. I'm going to tie in 3 of them on each side. I want the pearl section of the leg to just kind of reach and touch the overwing, the calf tail. I could tie those in with a couple tight wraps. Then I'll just use the other set of legs here to do the same thing on this other side. Once I have those tied in, I'm just going to kind of clean up the head here a little bit. Then I can whip finish. Then we can trim our legs. I like to pull all the legs kind of together at the same time. And we're going to trim them so that they reach past the length of this body, about twice the length of the body, just past our underwing, Krystal flash, and our calf tail. Just kind of get everything situated here. That is essentially the Beck's Sili-legged bonefish fly. Kind of a mix between a Crazy Charlie and a gotcha, but very effective. Looks like a little shrimp or a little crab, and the bonefish just kind of go nuts for it. And you can find all the materials to tie this fly on our website, intherifle.com. One last thing I forgot to do is I forgot to super glue the head. I just use a little bit of the brush on Zappa Gap, pretty easy to use. And you can put it in between your lead eyes as well. That'll keep them from rolling from side to side. That is the Beck's Sili-legged bonefish fly.